Hello, I'm Lindley Gooden. Welcome to Market Forces webinar on the Connected Railway, hosted in association with Vodafone. Now today we're looking at what the digital railway and the Internet of Things will mean for the rail network and for passengers too. Customer expectations are obviously higher than ever in all industries thanks to digital, and it's certainly true on the rail network. And with Wi-Fi on platform, team tablets, real-time information, to name but a few, already becoming crucial differentiators between operators, IoT-based technology is likely to be the next area for competition for passenger satisfaction. And Network Rail's Digital Railway Programme is a crucial launch point for innovation across the entire network. So we'll start today by discussing Network Rail's plans. We'll look at the impact nationwide next, and then how you can take advantage of the plan as it evolves. Before we do, let's meet the panelists who will be guiding us on our fabulous journey across the connected railway and beyond. First of all, we have Paul Boyle. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Lindley.
Good to see you. Paul is head of ERTMS at Virgin Trains East Coast. He's worked in rail for over 33 years and has been involved in the industry's transition to ERTMS since 2004. Good to see you. Next, we have Dan Holder. Hello, Dan.
Hi, Lindley.
Good to see you too. Dan has spent over 14 years working within the UK rail industry in various technical, engineering and managerial roles. He has a wealth of experience in the application, delivery and engineering assurance of multidisciplinary investment projects, and most recently, digital railway technology application. Good to see you too, Dan. Next, we have Dr. John Easton. Hello, John.
Good afternoon.
John is a lecturer working with the Birmingham Centre for Railway Research and Education at the University of Birmingham. His work in the rail domain has included the data management components of the TRIME third rail monitoring system. On a day-to-day basis, John is heavily involved in the Centre's £1.65 million strategic partnership with Network Rail on theme of data management and integration. Good to see you too, John. And last but certainly not least, we have Joanna Cracknell. Hello, Jo.
Hello, Lindley.
Jo is Business Development Manager, IoT at Vodafone. She's been with Vodafone for over 25 years, working through a variety of roles, including engineering and product management, and now in the Internet of Things division. Joanna is specifically focused on developing exciting new business within the transport sector. Great to see you all today, and thanks to Vodafone for supporting our webinar.
Thank you.
Couldn't do it without you. Okay, so we have lots to talk about over the next hour, don't we? With so many daily challenges for you and your customers already, and you're bound to have your own questions and comments for us. So we want to give you the opportunity to put them to our panelists. If you're watching us live today, you can send them in throughout the webinar. Do it now, either on Twitter using the hashtag Rail17, or you can do it on the question section if you're slightly more security conscious right here on our webpage. But let the world know and let us know too. We'll get to as many as we can towards the end of the discussion today, the last 10 to 15 minutes. But let's start by talking about Network Rail's Digital Railway project and what this really means for Britain's railways. First of all, Dan, can you get us started and tell us what the plan really means for operators and for the network?
Yes, certainly. I mean, the Digital Railway Programme essentially is about delivering a modern railway for a modern Britain. Through train control systems, modern technology, traffic management systems, the aim of the programme is to deliver better customer satisfaction, performance and actually capacity. Yeah. It's actually going to the heart of the problem and actually delivering using that new technology, and other things obviously can underpin against that.
An essential and huge new backbone for the industry.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Paul, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really change things and change the way we operate and do that transformation away from legacy signalling systems. You mentioned backbone. ETCS is the backbone of a digital railway, and it will put the foundations in place to really change the way we operate today. Yeah.
It's such a sweeping new change. It is essential to be future-proof, to operate well in the future, and not only within the rail industry, but for passengers, to tap into lifestyle and so on, and also to work with other operating roads and buses and so on. It's just essential to get that right. But the impact on how the railway operates could also be huge. Jo, what will that impact be?
is going to be huge and really exciting for Vodafone and IoT. It puts technology basically at the hub of everything, but I think it's critical that we understand and we learn from some of the issues that have happened in other countries, etc. So we learn from their mistakes, but also, you know, their successes.
That's right, and you know, the use of Internet of Things, although a wide term though it is, it's so accepted. It's our preferences. It's the way we live. It's what we want to do with our day, with our buying practices and so on. But it also feeds into a better service, perhaps more value-added services. So the value can be really, really huge for us passengers as well.
Yes, exactly. There's an awful lot of information that we can gather from every different system, but the whole point is bringing that back. There is lots of information out there. It's knowing what information you want and then bringing that back to a central hub so that you can manage and monitor that and see that as one picture rather than just bits and pieces.
What, in terms of innovation, John, it's one heck of an innovation if you can get this right. But for operators, what sort of innovation can be possible thanks to the use of, say, Internet of Things?
Well, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. You can look at condition monitoring. You can look at predict and prevent. You can look at how the trains are run. But really, for operators, what's going to matter out of all of this is how they interact with the passengers, the understanding of what the passengers want, the demand on the services, and that's all really being supported by sort of the innovation clauses being built into the franchises going forward.
If you get it right, it can really improve the way you work. It can make things more efficient. It means you can focus on the right information, but you still have to get your strategy, the plan for your passengers, your infrastructure right. I mean, you really have to focus on that. What am I trying to achieve? What do my passengers want before you go too far down the innovation route?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we see this sort of thing particularly, for example, in cases of disruption to service. So really being able to communicate with your passengers, get information to your passengers about what the disruption is going to mean to their journey is really very important.
Innovation, Paul, I mean, it's fundamental to what you're trying to do at the moment.
It is. We've already started our preparations to meet the demands that today's customer has. As John mentions, they need up-to-date current information. We have designed apps that will help the customer during that journey, and a lot of innovation on real-time information, giving advice on what the customer's options are. And it's all about giving the customer choice and personalising it as well.
And getting the services, you know, one of the core gripes for a passenger would be services running on time for whatever reason that may be. It helps with that. It helps to inform passengers, another gripe. So actually it does start to seal the gaps that there may be in existing systems which don't keep up real time.
It is, and this is where the digital railway comes in to its own, really, is that the starting point is your cooperation, your signalling and controlling of trains from A to B. Using that data, which would be then to the second data, to inform the customer systems. That's the real, golden nugget in digital railway.
And don't forget, of course, that with the digital technology that Paul and his team have been looking at, and we have in Digital Railway Programme, actually reduces significantly the number of line-side assets, for example, so that availability and that is higher, and that maintainability cost is reduced. So actually provides customers with a better, more kind of fluid running system.
And a two-way street. And Joe, you know, innovation, I mean, from Vodafone's point of view, the use of the data is really, in some ways, what it's about. I mean, it may not involve a mobile, but that's not exactly, you know, that's not just what happens at Vodafone. And this is why, you know, data is fundamentally important to make a better service, whatever industry you're in.
Well, I've worked for Vodafone for over 25 years. I've never sold or worked with a phone in my life. So certainly there's a huge part of Vodafone that isn't phones. But we are developing new technologies. There's NB-IoT that's going to be launched pretty soon. Well, actually, we've got some trials out there already, and some other countries in Europe have already launched, which is going to help this programme because it's low cost, low power. It just makes everything far more efficient, far easier, far cheaper, and means that the rail operators, etc., aren't putting out huge amounts of cost for data. They can pick that up easily.
And from the passenger's point of view, again, because we always have to focus on passengers, we always do. if you get your information flow and the hub right and the way that you use that information, well, it's going to transform passenger experience.
And comfort. So you can have all these sensors on the trains. So, you know, it could be from just temperature control to, you know, everything else that's going on, you know, air quality, etc. as well.
Yeah.
So those sensors could be everywhere in the train.
So Dan, what are the steps right now? I mean, let's jump straight into it. What steps are happening right now to deliver the program?
So, yeah, we're getting some good traction. We've been working quite closely with the department to look at strategic cases of where digital railway will definitely add benefit. We've looked across all the country in this process. And we've also launched an early contractor involvement work stream, which is the aim is to bring the suppliers in earlier, help us get the lessons learned from the rest of Europe, get the lessons learned from the rest of the world, in fact, because ETCS is not just a European system, as we know. And that has provided us with a good foundation over the last 12 months to understand where some of our challenges will be to adapt this technology to the network.
What lessons are coming through in broad terms?
Broadly speaking, it's about cross-industry engagement. It's about getting our supply chain engaged early. It's about, you know, we need to accept as an infrastructure manager at this moment in time when it comes to this new technology, especially around command control and signaling, the expertise exists in that supply chain more than it does in the client organisation and in the train operators too. So it's absolutely critical that we use the knowledge base that's available to us to actually make us make the right decisions and actually use our partners like Paul and Virgin Trains to help us with that.
And John, you know, as somebody who works in that flow of information, understanding passenger numbers, understanding where it's all happening, there is so much going on, and I think you'll be probably quite pleased to hear that collaboration, that working with partners, as you've been doing, is fundamentally important. Let's face it, most train operating companies have great expertise, but actually you still have to work daily to make sure the trains are running. And that is bricks and mortar, that's making sure people are at the right place at the right time. So expertise is going to be really fundamental. Collaboration is going to be really important to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the expertise thing, certainly, the industry's really been looking at what the next set of skills will need to be. So the National Skills Academy, for example, has been looking a lot at this sort of digital systems question, how we're going to get people coming not just through as university graduates with these skills into the system, but what the appropriate set of apprenticeships are going to be to support these new technologies.
Skills are going to be so important. And Paul, you know, in terms of your taking advantage of this is a business case. It needs to be done. It's got to be done so passengers are happier and the teams are happier as well. Yeah. How can you take advantage of these new ways of working?
The key thing that we are preparing and we're in development with now is using them systems, developing our systems that start the connection with the customer right before they buy their ticket and during the journey. And during the journey we've got new applications such as Beam, which customers can watch live TV, live news, live movies on board the service via our Wi-Fi. One of the things that's interesting on the East Coast, we were the first to put Wi-Fi on the services back in 2001. At the time, everyone thought, "What are you doing? You're crazy."
Back in 2001, they probably thought, "What's Wi-Fi?"
Yeah, Wi-Fi. Yeah. And at the time, there was probably 2 or 3 devices per train talking to them systems. Now we frequently see 500-600 devices, and we're moving on our 4th generation of Wi-Fi. And we need to think of the next steps, and the next steps is linking into the systems that Dan's mentioned, the signalling systems, the real-time systems at Network Rail and infrastructure, and the data systems that suppliers will bring. And that way we really keep the customer connected, keep them the demand in place.
We've already talked about how the lessons, the importance of learning lessons, not just from Europe, not just from the UK, but from the world. One of the lessons that's learned in many industries is when you start employing Internet of Things tools and trying to understand what passenger behaviour is and feeding that into the business model, look, it's a lot of information, it's difficult to handle, and actually the focus on the core objectives, sadly, can come second. How important are always understanding what you're trying to achieve throughout the company, which is also difficult.
It's really, really key that that's done. And it's really key to look at the business issues first and make sure that you're trying to solve those first rather than just taking on innovation. And the key is as well, you know, that these guys will know is that there's so many people with expertise out there that you use those guys. You know, there's some brilliant app developers and things like that out there as well. So, you know, integrating with those guys and bringing it all together is really key.
Collaboration also, historically, and it's not so bad now, but collaboration also seemed to be the opposite of competition, and competition is why you're in business. Now, how much do you need to get over that and work with people, Paul?
It's so important to really bring innovation into the rail industry. We need to look outside of the rail industry, and it's not to forget where we've been or what we currently do, but it's to add the fresh ideas, to bring in some of the expertise and also new thinking into how you can use systems data to meet the demands of the future.
Joe, we've kind of covered it in some ways, but what are the big potential applications for IoT that you see in terms of use of the rail network, and also value-added services that you can bring in while you're travelling?
Yeah, I mean, Wi-Fi obviously is the big one. You know, that's out there, and most trains have got it. It's then from a security perspective, so it could be security of your passengers, so it could be the CCTV on a train, etc. You know, there's so many different types of technology out there now with solar power and other things that can pick up that CCTV, and also cloud-based, so that you haven't got the huge infrastructure issues. But then it's security and tracking of your assets as well. So it's understanding where everything is at any time. You know, there's, and engine management. You know, there's understanding and predicting, issues with the train. Yeah. So you're keeping that rolling stock running and getting the best out of all your assets.
I mean, that's one of the key problems with any rail network, any part of the rail network, is making sure the rolling stock's rolling. You know, and Paul, constant monitoring retail information.
Yeah, we've got a lot of experience in this system. We've had a system on board for several years now on the East Coast, and again we're moving that on to the next generation with our new Azuma trains. And it's about making sure that when we do have problems, we get that awareness, we get the early alerts, so that then we can minimise the impact on the customer and the journey, and also get them systems to talk to the signalling and train management systems, so that we can regulate that train accordingly, so that we again minimise that overall network impact. So there's a massive potential with this, and in moving the customer experience forward with it.
Dan, the good news is that everyone's up for it. That's a good way to start.
They are, and I mean, just touching on Paul's point there, having the technology on the train is amazing, but we need to get that information to our systems as an infrastructure asset manager. So that is absolutely critical, and there's a bit of a people and change thing, culture that goes in with that as well, in transferring of data. But yeah, I think it reiterates the point that for Digital Railway to work, it is going to need the cross-industry collaboration. We're seeing it already. And we need to get better at it, I think, don't we?
Yeah. It is. It's something that's part of the stuff and work that we're doing on the LNE is looking at what do we actually want from the route. What does good look like from a train operating point of view and an infrastructure controller point of view, and them things are coming together. As Dan mentioned earlier, we intend to then bring the supply chain in. Get their thinking and understanding of what good looks like to them, and that
John,
way we will deliver right solutions.
It sounds very positive, and I know it's only a group of us here today, but how ready do you think the industry as a whole is to tap into the benefits to make this all happen? Because so far, so good.
I think we're much more ready now than we were, say, 5 or 6 years ago, is the short answer, which it sounds obvious, but 5 or 6 years ago, 2011, for example, we had the value for money study came out, and it basically said in a lot of pages, guys, you need to do better. But then, since then, we've got the rail technical strategy, which says what does the industry want to look like. It's an agreed vision between everybody, and the capability delivery plan, which then says, okay, what sort of core areas do we need to then deliver that, and all that gives us a framework to sort of hang innovation off. And then on the academic side of things, we have people coming together, for example, in the UK Rail Research and Innovation Network project, which is it's nearly 100 million of funding, actually, about a third from government, 2/3 from the industry supply chain, where people like Network Rail have offered money, paid in money for a sort of interactions with a group of 8 universities looking at different areas, including a digital systems centre that's at Birmingham.
So we're off the blocks, aren't we? They are the fundamental points to know about the Digital Railway Programme and the potential benefits of the Internet of Things and how that feeds in. Now let's talk about the potential impact on the network and what it could mean for passengers. Let's delve more into the passenger benefits. Dan, if you can kick us off, how do you think the Digital Railway Programme, really practically will benefit passengers? We've touched on it, from day to day. Give us a picture, if you can.
Day to day, I guess it's better information in terms of the traffic management systems that will allow better customer information, not only to the customers that have got access to the smartphones and the apps, but actually to the platform staff that can communicate to those that don't necessarily have those sorts of facilities. So that's key. Better information. The systems, as I've mentioned before, reduction in line-side kit, better availability. Better regulation, so actually more trains on time, greater numbers. Yeah. So it would be about modernising that railway, going back to that key theme.
One thing we haven't talked about, well, two things we haven't talked about are the increasing numbers on the network. So it needs to be more efficient, it needs to be more connected, which I think we don't have to even discuss. That has to happen. But also the interaction with teams. So teams have a hard enough job, and to make customers' lives better, you make the team's lives better, which also then makes the passengers' lives happier, which then, and so on and so forth, fade to end. Yeah. So it's really important to think about the teams and how they are connected, but also how they react to passengers. So, in general terms, how important are the teams in this equation?
They're very important. We've got to, take people on the journey, and there's, massive change that there's going to be operationally to the UK rail network. They have got to be at the core of it. They've got to understand the technology. They've got to understand the reasons why the new technology is to be used, and they've also got to understand and change the processes to really get the benefits from that technology as well. Because a good example would be a driver advisory system. Is if the driver doesn't follow that advisory system, then that we're not going to get the full benefit from that system. So it's an important part of that culture change that we've got, and that's one of the journeys we're starting at Virgin Trains. We're starting that development of our people, using simulation, using training sessions to do that business change.
Really important, and that is happening in many training operated companies. It's really important.
And the signallers, the control centres, they all need to be took on that same journey.
Yeah. Let's talk about value-added services for a minute, because certainly in many other industries, most other industries, value-added services are kind of that lifestyle element to the Internet of Things, bringing in services. Paul, just continue with us for a second. What sort of value-added services do you think can be offered to passengers, in brief?
Right. I mean,
in brief, I apologise. There's so many, but
there's not a day goes by, Lindley, that I don't travel on the East Coast Main Line. And every single day I see something where I go, ETCS would fix that. And it happened last night, it happened this morning coming down to London. And it's because of the legacy signalling controls that we've got, the limited tools that the signallers and controllers have got at their disposal, that means that a simple regulation of trains, which has to happen day in, day out, thousands of times around the network, it always results in a massive impact on the customer. And
if you just give us we'll get one example from each, because we all use the trains.
Again, typical example. I travelled on the 1508 off King's Cross to York yesterday. We were slightly late. That train stops all of the stations along the route up to York. Approaching Grantham, we got a really slow approach, brought to a stand, and we had to drop into platform 4, which is the slow line platform. That was to regulate it for the 1530 service. Right decision, and it meant that the 1530 kept right time. But the impact was an additional 5 minutes delay in the 1508 service that then broke the connections further down the journey at Newark, Doncaster, York for the customers who were on board the 1508.
We've all been there.
And digital signalling would have removed them restrictions, and the impact on the train for that regulation move would have been minimal.
We also have, we'll get some more examples as we go. It's really important. I mean, let's throw in a few examples along the way. But Joe, let's talk about technical innovations. What technical innovations, for passengers can be introduced, thanks to the Internet of Things, thanks to this wild array of potential information and insight that we can get from passengers.
There is so much out there. Even from a point of we use so much data on our network, and we understand the movement of people, that you can anomalise all that information so it's not personalised at all, and you can see the flow of people. So from when they get up in the morning and they travel through how their car journey is to the train station, what their parking like was at the parking was like at the train station, all the way through to when they're standing on the platform. Where's the best place to stand on the platform? There's so much out there that you can do to change the way. Even finding a car parking space. There's huge amounts that can be done.
And they're things that can link directly to the train's intelligence, so that we can then advise the customers where the empty seats are on the train, and where they should position themselves on the train. But also being able to retail in real time, and where we've got empty seats, being able to flag to people, okay, you could get this train and you can get it at a reduced price potentially.
Very much. Good examples. And also, we obviously, from a company point of view, will always think, how can we connect up our services? But actually, what the passenger wants is to connect up their journey. That one individual journey that maybe hasn't gone right in the past. This time I want to get to the car park, I want to get to the train, I want to find a seat, I want to get there on time, I want to find out what's happening when I reach the other end. Connecting up my journey, rather than maybe the railway as a whole.
Exactly.
And it's not just within rail, is the other thing. So it's about the multimodal system. So it's about the sort of the trunk journey that you make on the railway, but it's about the last 5 miles either end of that, and how you get to and from the station, and particularly for high-speed rail, actually getting people to and away from the stations quickly when they arrive is very important.
Very much as airports need to. There's a real parallel there in terms of the peak times, in terms of how quickly you get off the tarmac. It's more similar with the numbers and the importance of that train leaving on time. Customer tracking, though, John, as well. I mean, this is something that you obviously heavily involved with, and it's really fascinating. Although we can't go into, everyone will be using data if they're doing this in different ways. We can't go into detail on that one too much. How important is this to customer tracking and making sure platforms are doing the right things and the trains are doing the right things? How can you track customers?
Well, I mean, there are various ways of doing that, and obviously either you're anonymising or you need a certain amount of consent from the passenger. That's very important to say.
Yes.
But the sort of things that you can then do if you have that information, certainly in terms of managing how the passengers are moving about, it's actually quite important. So in busy stations, for example, and when people are unfamiliar with those stations, it's very powerful. So sort of nudging passengers around routes that are going to be not congested, getting them to the place they need to be on time. That's far easier with people, ironically enough, who don't know the station. Because if you sort of know the station, then you know all the rat runs. And everybody who knows the Underground knows that if you drop down onto certain platforms, you can cut through to other places. And you'll never get those passengers to behave in the way you want to. They'll do what they want to do. But the passengers who need the help, you can certainly influence, and that can have a big effect on how congested your station is.
There's a clear yes from down there. I mean, this is clear. This is insight that can actually start to really improve everyone's passenger experience. With that, we can't talk about we just can't go into the use of data in that principle. But if passengers are there and you can actually understand where they want to go and where they are going, in principle, great idea.
Absolutely. And we've seen it on the Thameslink programme, for example, where the dwell times, and there's going to be 24 trains per hour through the core, Thameslink core, just down the river here in London. And absolutely critical to getting those dwell times and getting that availability of the infrastructure is passengers getting on trains within a certain time and then departing in a London Underground sort of style. So that behaviour is absolutely critical.
Joe, data. I mean, so fundamentally important to all of this. Clearly that goes without saying in some ways. But how can that data be piped in and start to be used? How can you get insights out of the data that, wherever it comes from, whatever consent is issued, can start to build a picture of what I as a passenger want.
Yes. So there's platforms out there that will draw all that information together, and it is, as I said before, it is about pulling all that information into one. That's the only way that you're going to make a difference. So by using a specific platform, you can using APIs, you can pull all that information in without impeding on anybody's information and other things as well. So that's the key.
Yeah, we've heard from Paul that Virgin Trains East Coast are doing this in many ways, and others are. TfL are trying to do this as well in their area. But it is a difficult job. It is a huge job and very daunting.
It is.
And there will be stumbling blocks along the way. How do you start to navigate those? I mean, really, I guess you have to identify how you're doing, get measurement, real time, test and learn, test and learn.
Yeah, it's understanding exactly what you need. And, we as a team in Vodafone spend a lot of time with the train operating companies, even at franchise level as well, and what our capabilities are and what other things, and just bringing some ideas together. So it's exactly as everybody says, is that it's about using your suppliers, who have that expertise, quite early on in the thing, because quite often, we might have some weird and wonderful ideas that we're going to know, and you might say the same to, a network operator. Everybody's got a different opinion, and if we split it down and work through those business issues, then we can obviously solve it quite quickly.
Are there common lessons? I mean, I'd love to hear some of the weird and wonderful ideas, but let's not go into that right now. We have limited time. But lessons that are being learned in these test phases, Paul. I mean, are you learning? I mean, without too much, are you learning lessons on how you deal with it?
We're certainly identifying. It's not one size fits all with customers. There's the customer that's well connected. They use the iPhone for everything, and they understand all of the retail that we have on the web, on mobile devices. But we do have a mixture, and so we do have to make sure that we do cater for all of the capability, and also equip our stations with them areas. So things such as customers' own development is a thing that we're really trying to get right, so that we embrace the technology, but also we make sure we take people along with it, and the customer has got to be right at the heart of that.
It's still an enabling tool. It enables you to do the job that the core job, much better. And John, I guess they come back to that collaboration, working with the experts who may not already be in your company, but they can help you to navigate as customers want to navigate the corridors. Experts can now start to work with you. Do you think collaboration is obviously happening? You're collaborating with Network Rail and others. Could there be more? Is there still a sort of certain a bridge between the industry and the people outside the industry at the moment?
Yeah, and the outside the industry bit, I think, is the bit that we really need to work on developing now. There's a lot of the people who, aside from the sort of the core components of the signalling and things, a lot of the easy wins from things like Digital Railway are to do with how you use that information downstream, how you deliver it to the passenger or to your team members or to whoever. The people with the experience of delivering that sort of information to those sorts of people aren't in the railway. They're in other places. They will float about. They'll do 6 months, a year in each industry. They'll move on. They'll do another project. And we really need to speed up the ways that we can work with those people. So at the moment, as an industry, we're quite used to buying things that will last 30 years. We're not used to buying things that will last 6 months. And we need to get better at that.
And Dan, how can Network Rail sort of work well with train operators to deliver this, to make it happen? Because there is a lot of education, there's a lot of, I've said it before, the day-to-day job is busy enough.
Yeah, the train operators become more of a fundamental part of digital railway technology than they ever have before. You've got to remember, I think you could say 25% of the signalling system now sits on Paul's trains. Yeah. So there is a massive integration piece that happens with every digital scheme. So it's absolutely critical, and I know it's that industry engagement is absolutely critical, because without these guys, without actually giving the customers, who are customers, to their passengers, the actual influence on what we do, where the money is spent, and how it actually delivers the benefit, we need that engagement from these guys.
Paul, before we move on to how to take advantage, really take advantage of all the changes that we talked about, how is using these systems and thinking differently about the information that's coming in and going back out to help the service. How is that transforming the relationship between you and your customers, and in a wider sense, the network?
I mean, some examples of that, and how we're already using data is we had a cancellation of a service, at the weekend. We're now able to proactively advise, where we know that in advance, advise customers who were planning to travel on that train, that service is going to be cancelled, this is your alternatives. And we can do that several hours in advance, which allows people again to take better control of their personal lives and also make informed choices. And that probably 12 months ago wasn't available. And I think that's the sort of thing that we need to get more and more better at, and give the customer the awareness that being able to share and exchange and connect to our business gives them that that level of control over their journey and experience with us.
It's such a useful example, but it is a radical overhaul in many ways, isn't it, of the rail industry?
It's a huge change in the way that the rail industry has worked in the past. But we watch, the more that I work with the train operating companies, the more, I see that they really are embracing this, and big change is coming. It's sometimes the technology is limiting them, but as slowly that comes on and we have more access to trackside and all the other things and improving network, then obviously we can improve that as well for these guys.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'll come back to you in a second, Dan. Yeah, I'll come back to you in a second. Look, we have so little time. We have covered the plans, the digital railway plans, the benefits to us, our customers, and the wider impact in brief. Now let's look at how you can really take advantage of the changes ahead. First of all, let's go to culture first of all. Come to you in a second, Dan. Culture is so difficult to keep fresh, whatever industry you're in. How do you start to improve the culture, or how fundamental is the culture to improving the service with IoT involved?
It's that early engagement, and it's about collecting that. It's about big data at the end of the day, and understanding exactly what your customers want and your staff. It's working with everybody, collaboratively and pulling that data together.
Yeah.
That's really key.
Dan, you're about to respond on the difference, the radical overhaul in some ways to the train industry. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, and I guess my point was going to be that we need to be, in the UK, the industry of choice. We need to be the industry, the network that the suppliers and the third-party industry wants to come and engage with. And that's a bit of a culture change in itself, because that's from becoming quite an informed client from a network rail point of view, who are the backbone of all this, I would suggest. Actually releasing some of that kind of control, if you like, and actually branching out and actually using that expertise from around the private industry, etc.
How do you make that happen? I mean, it's difficult to get everybody involved, to see the same picture, to think, sing from the same song sheet. How many other metaphors are there? It's difficult to get everyone together to do the same thing and to improve passenger experience across the network.
It is, but without the need, and we're getting a lot of backing in the Digital Railway Programme at the moment, not just at government level, but also, I think, across industry-wide. But there are other competitors, and they're competitors in Australia, they're competitors in Europe, and we want them, we want that supply chain and that expertise to come to us. So we need to really sell ourselves as this industry-wide programme that actually we're open for business on this in this space.
It is, and I think we shouldn't underestimate the appetite that there is in the train operators and freight operators to change the way that we operate. Historically, we've always embraced new technology, whether it be the change from steam to diesel, diesel to electric. It has evolved, the rail industry. But what this, the springboard that there is digital railway can really take us into that real step change, and it is a real game changer for us as an industry. Yeah. But that will underpin us really to compete against the airlines and the road. And certainly, you look at the investment made in our new fleet, new technology of onboard signalling, but a capability of 140 mile per hour operation. that starts to shrink journey times. It really challenges the Anglo-Scottish market against air. We can shrink the journey times, we can get the infrastructure right that delivers the train capability.
What about productivity? Because you know, when you're stretched already, it's difficult to increase productivity. You can perhaps work really hard to improve the infrastructure, to the connectivity and the information on passengers, making the passengers' lives easier. But productivity is really hard to improve when you're working pretty much flat out already across the network. Can this really help towards that as well?
Yeah. It's working smarter, Lindley, and also the system being a lot slicker. Dan mentioned the Thameslink example around dwell times at stations. That can be transferred into mainline operation. Yep. You know, the regulation, the current restrictions that there is on junction operation, we can learn from some of the metro railways, bring them on to mainline railways as well. So yeah, there's a lot of the ability to make the network a lot more flexible in the digital world than it is today.
Because it's not just about the update of the infrastructure. You know, it's allowing more of that infrastructure to be utilised at any one time, isn't it? So rather than having the way that the signalling works at the moment, it allows more trains on there using that system. So it's far more efficient.
And the role of the maintainer, for example, from an infrastructure manager perspective, will change. You know, less kit, better smart infrastructure, more data coming from trains, more data coming via our third parties. It's going to be an absolute culture change in the way that we do things. So with that, we'll allow flex to increase productivity on the things that really matter, which is the customer focus.
And without the knowledge and the measuring of the fat in the system, things that perhaps could be improved, but you don't know about them yet. Without that, you can't do it. So,
I mean, on that point, Lindley, and picking up on some of the lessons learned, a lot of the lessons learned from other parts of the world and Europe has been about the modes of operation that certainly the new signalling system allows you to operate under. And there's many areas and places in the world that currently today our rules and signalling restrictions would mean we stop, we have to wait for certain things to happen before we can move a train. You can operate in a degraded mode, and so it's the concept around always having the rail network moving rather than it be stopped and wait for repairs to be made.
John, what will a connected railway look like to you? Will it just be a constant mass of trains moving all the time and the infrastructure around that, the ability to fit with other systems, with airports, to fit everything together? Or is it something else? Do you have a Blade Runner style, model in your mind?
No, I absolutely. It's really about having the railway as part of a wider transport system without having to have a single authority responsible for all of that. It's about maintaining the ability of the railway to operate as a standalone business while making sure that the passengers still get everywhere that they're trying to get to. Now, the way that you do that is by opening up the information, and that's certainly the most important thing that we need to be doing. You might need to commoditise some of that, at least between internal stakeholders. You might need blockchains or something, micropayments that allows you to exchange that information in a way that the cost of collecting the data is covered by the people who are using it. And you also need to think about the security of those systems, because the security of a cyber physical system like the railway, something with actuators as well as just computers, is subtly different from normal IT security. It's something the industry is looking at, something we're getting there on. There's a research institute in trustworthy industrial control systems at Imperial that does good work in this area. But it is something that we need to be thinking of, particularly as we start moving towards the in-cab signal.
Well, with every headline every week of driverless cars and driverless lorries in the UK now, and so on and so forth, presumably with safety and security absolutely at the heart of that. Passenger, safety is fundamentally important. Then you can start to integrate, then you can start to look at this. How does the Internet of Things really start to build that vision, which is an integrated system, a truly connected railway, with the systems around it? How does that Internet of Things really start to push that forward?
So it is around making sure that everything is secure. I mean, from a network perspective, it's about making sure that there's no access can be had from any other source apart from of the allowed sources on there.
Yeah.
To make sure that security is there, really.
Fundamentally, it's really important. You can't have your wireless kettle tapping into your network. Paul, you were agreeing as well with that.
Yeah, it's obviously right on the agenda of the programme. You know, the cyber security and making sure that you know, the systems are secure, and you know, we have the right people systems that manage that as well in place. On the safety front, I think the other thing we shouldn't underestimate is the power of the train protection part of digital railway. It underpins everything around the signalling system, and it's something that is, you know, in this country we need to embrace and bring the full train protection and speed signalling into the system.
We've talked about a lot today. I mean, we really have, and I hope you stuck with us and really found it very useful. Hopefully confirming, if not enlightening you more than perhaps you came to us with. But Dan, there are key issues here. There are people, there are passengers, there's movement, there's infrastructure, there are systems and security. I mean, it's everything really. But something I would have asked earlier on was, what can we do now? What can we do right now to start to approach digitising, you know, making your railway, your particular service within, more digital, more connected? Are there things that people should be looking at in principle? And we'll go around.
I think from my perspective, we need to identify at what point has this current systems that we've got on our network are at maximum capacity, and is there a demand from a customer perspective for more services on that area? You saw the recent works at Waterloo. We've extended platforms. That was the solution there. Rationalise the layout. In some cases, and some of the things that Paul described earlier on the London North Eastern route, you can't build your way out of the problem in terms of civils and its interventions. So that technology solution needs to be there. So we've been identifying those at key areas across the country, and we've been developing business cases in conjunction with the train operators, in conjunction with the Department for Transport and our supply chain, to identify where are the key areas that we should target significant digital railway investment in over the next control period, maybe 2 control periods, and then on into the future.
Get a clear view.
Building that platform.
John, you know, I was interested when you were talking about collaboration, and perhaps there is a bridge still to be, well, there's a gulf to be bridged in terms of relationships with the outside world. Anything else that you think could be done right now to make this, to push this on?
I think a lot of it is about understanding where we are and what we can do better quickly, I think, perhaps. So changing the signalling system, for example, is going to take time. There's stuff to take out, there's stuff to put onto vehicles, there's a lot of control stuff. But there's been a lot of work, for example, in the algorithm space around traffic management, EU projects, on-time, capacity for rail, things like that, which have developed new ways of routing trains, which will try and optimise for particular parameters. So getting back to the timetabled service as quickly as possible, or getting the most passengers back onto time as quickly as possible, that sort of thing. And those outputs just sit out there, and it's a failing both on the part of the sort of the academic side of things and the commercial side of things. But we're not very good at joining those things up into products, and that's what we need to be focusing on, I think.
Okay, we're almost at your time now for audience questions. But Paul, what do you think? What can be done right now?
I think right now we really just need to get on with it, Lindley. I think that's the thing. It's, you know, there's been a lot of talk through the various you know, areas of digital railways and the transition to a digital railway in the UK for a number of years now. We're getting there. We've got trains fitted. We're getting our people ready. On the mainline railway, we really need to start tackling the infrastructure. From a funding point of view, and I think that, you know, Dan touched on some of these areas and how we're trying to combat these, but we really need to look beyond the control period, and we need to look at whole life. We need to look at models similar to how we procure trains and how we procure infrastructure. But yeah, I think it's time to get off the fence. We're doing enough talking, and we do understand the issues. We understand a lot of the solutions, and I think we should crack on and and deliver it because that's the right thing to do for the customer.
That's the headline for the future promotion of this event. Joe, what do you think?
It is about prioritising. So it's, you know, the technology's there. You know, there's so many solutions and things out there, and it's about prioritising what needs to come first, rather than going for everything headlong. Is just getting one thing right at a time and getting moving and getting that going. It's all there, and the expertise is there. And
this is a lesson that I've heard so many times in other industries. You know, you really, first of all, need to understand your customers, prioritise the things that they care about right now. That'll change. That'll evolve. That'll change every moment of the day. But for now, understand what they want, what you can do to resolve it, and then the ideas will start to come in. The innovation can be test, learn, small steps, fail fast, move on.
Exactly.
All right, well, we've covered a lot of detail so far, and we really hope you found the insights from our fantastic panel really helpful today. Wherever you are in the world, we now want you to share your comments and experiences with us for the last 10 minutes. Before we do, I'd like to just draw your attention to the feedback form that you should be seeing on your screen very shortly. Lo and behold, hopefully now, if you're watching us live. We'd be really grateful if you just fill that in for us. It's really important for you to give us your thoughts from our side and to work out what you think and what your preferences are in the future. So please do that. But we have been asking you to send your questions, your comments, both here on the webpage and also on Twitter using the hashtag Rails17. You can still do that. Please do if you're watching us live. Let's have a look at those now and get our panelists' thoughts and ideas. There's one to my screen right here. Lucy Pryor from the Rail Alliance. Hello, Lucy. Good to hear from you. How can we ensure that the seamless connectivity and security surveillance of people or goods across operators? I guess apart from surveillance, the most important thing there is seamless. How can we connect up surveillance? Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts? It's quite a delicate issue. Paul, any just overall thoughts?
I think this is where networks can help.
Exactly.
We've historically always had a fixed network in the rail industry, and it was probably one of the most resilient networks in the country at one point. And I think we need to re-establish that. That way that we can, not only for security, but it does give us the potential to help some of the community in the UK. You know, we run through a lot of rural areas, and some of them areas won't have connectivity, and there's potential that we could bring connectivity, but also the spin-off is we're able to join up our networks that help things like security.
I mean, and from an IoT perspective, is that our network, our IoT network, is an IoT network. It's not open to all the consumers. It's specifically for that data transmission, etc. So security to us, but throughout whole of Vodafone is prevalent. Is really, really prevalent and really key for us. It's something we take incredibly seriously as well. So,
John.
So I think a lot of this is about avoiding buying systems as silos, which is something that we traditionally do. We buy systems that will do a specific job. And really what we need to be looking at going forward is looking at how we specify those systems so that they provide information that's usable in a lot of generic contexts, that you don't lose the meaning of that information when you do it. So semantic models, ontologies, things like that. But we need to have that provision into new systems as we buy them.
Very good. Many questions coming through. Please send yours. We'd love to hear from them. Let's crack on. Just get one or two people's thoughts on each of these. Related question from Faz Dar. Thank you very much. You're the lead statistician for HS2. Thanks for getting in touch with us. What's the panel's view on the importance of transparency, particularly data transparency, to the rail industry? The transparency of data. Now, I know, again, we're going delicate first. This is very important. Who thinks about data as a daily activity? John?
So it depends on the exact definition of transparency we're working with here. But it is absolutely critical that for any item of data which you're making a decision based on, you understand the provenance of that item of data. Absolutely critical. And it's one of the big challenges where actually with a lot of these passenger-facing things, so where you look at Twitter and you say, I could make my black box algorithm mine a Twitter feed and say which train operator is performing best. And to an extent you can, but you then have to be very careful that you understand where that data is coming from, who the user posting it is, and whether or not they're posting it just to cause problems, whether or not that data is fake, which is the current hot term for such things.
Transparency and yes, and the use of the data with GDPR, things like that going on at the moment. There are big issues here. We can't possibly answer them all in one go, but as long as the issues are clear and understood, and the importance of dealing with this information clearly in the right way is understood, you're on the right track. Apologies for the pun. Rakesh Parekh, thank you very much for getting in touch. You're from Opinsta. Knowing how slow the UK rail industry is at adopting to new technology, realistically, how much impact can the Internet of Things really have on the passenger experience, and when do you see this change happening? Okay, I'll have to keep this really short, even though that's a very long potential answer. Right.
It could be a huge answer. I mean, some of the technologies that are coming on at the moment, you know, some of the availability of the trackside information, etc. as well. There's so much there. It's just mind-blowing the amount you could put in a train. You know, and it does depend, as we said, on what you choose first to go for. I mean, you know, with NB-IoT, that's already being launched. That's already out there. That's already being rolled out across the country. So that gives access to all the new train operating companies to that type of data and that type of data feed as well.
I think we're also on the prioritisation of what you're looking at.
It is, and I think the customer's got to be at the heart of it, Lindley. I think there's, you know, as an industry, we may be slow in some areas, but in other areas we're not. We're quite at the forefront, and we're testing new technologies and bringing information in. We're currently working with a Formula One provider to look at seat occupancy, and we bolted, you know, test equipment onto the trains. Understand, can we learn from Formula One? So I would challenge that the rail industry is always slow at moving things forward.
I was going to say, they certainly aren't. They probably were, but they are really getting there. Actually, really getting there. There's some really good innovation going on.
I mean, it's difficult because it's an understandable point made by one of our audience members. Thank you very much for the point, but it has to work. It has to be so nimble, so flexible. You have to start to be agile, and that's got to be part of the ultimate aim, hasn't it, Dan, of what this can do. If you're not working real time, ultimately, then you're not listening to that passenger who just passed through your station and the many passengers, in controlling flow, for example, just one example.
Yeah, and don't forget, this is one of the busiest railways in the world, and every day we see coming into London and into some of our major cities across the north, passengers standing, and they're always going to need that need to travel. So we've got to work around our constraints, because passengers want better services, but that sometimes that has to be blockages. There has to be times where we know we have to undertake engineering works, but we've also got to keep a railway and a service running for those who need to get to work. So it's not quite as easy as saying we're slow at adapting the technology, because we've got quite an intense service to run as a business now. So it is difficult, but we're finding the right balance, I think, and hopefully this platform will actually enable us to get better at how we deliver works, how we change over from systems.
Well, we have other questions through. I'm going to mention who one of the people, Mike Smith, Performance and Operations Manager at Stagecoach Rail. Thanks for writing in, Mike. Your question, sadly we don't have time for it. Are there concerns around security and safety as a result of connecting the railway? We've kind of touched on that. Thanks very much for the question. We don't really have time to do that right now. I will ask one final question from Corinne Marin, Senior CCS Engineer at HS2. Thanks to HS2 for watching us today. How can we future-proof systems? Now, it's a big question, but I'll ask the general principle, which is how important is it to be able to add the capability around your systems at this stage?
Yeah, it's incredibly important to be flexible, because the thing is, you know, people's expectations and requirements are changing all the time, and you have to be able to move. You know, investing in a huge amount of technology and then it not being able to move or change is something that we should really keep away from. You know, building on existing is exactly where we need to be.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's about it. I hope you've found the discussion of the connected railway, how the digital railway plan could kick-start brand new ways to think about passenger service and experience. I hope you've enjoyed today. We've also talked about how customers' time with you could start to influence the way you work in the near future. That's what this is all about. Clearly, there are major changes happening across the network every single day, as well as new techniques and technologies helping to connect your own teams and passengers. The Internet of Things can provide brand new inspiration and insight to streamline and automate some of that work every day, but it does need our attention right now, and a lot of attention with it, alongside clear lines of communication within the industry, as well as with customers. So look, hopefully today's webinar has given you a few ideas to take away to your business on how you can start to take that forward. For now, it's time to go. A big thank you to our panelists who've been fantastic for sharing their expertise, Paul, Dan, John and Joe. It's been great to have you here with us today. And thanks to Vodafone for supporting our webinar. Couldn't do it without them. From the Market Force team here at TrueBlock Studios, we very much hope that you'll be able to join us again at one of our future events. If you'd like to know more about rail, don't miss our Future Rail Infrastructure Conference with Network Rail, HS2, Crossrail 2, and many, many more on the 18th of September. You can find out much more on our website, which is marketforce.eu.com, or by following us on Twitter, which is MF_rail. Well, thanks very much for watching and sending in your many comments and questions. We'll see you again soon. Until then, all the best. Take care.